Hello, in this video I will be talking about my process instead of lore. I will get back to the lore stuff, but because this was made just a little differently, because I planned to put it on a t-shirt, I just didn't think it would fit as well. Eventually, I will make another piece of art of this dragon specifically, and write lore for it, just not today. Feel free to put lore ideas for this dragon, since I don't have any ideas for him. Whatever ideas you guys do come up with, whether or not I use it for this dragon or a different dragon, I will attempt to credit you. It would probably be at the end of the video or something, where I would normally put how long it took me to make the dragon. You could view this as a shout out. Well, anyway, let me actually talk about my process instead of babbling on about other things, although I might start rambling on about other things later in the video. So, for pretty much at this point, for all the dragons I do, or just digital stuff in general, I do this shaping thing. I found it helps me plan out the piece better than sketch lines. I think it's because I can be pretty loose with the shapes, so by the time I get to the line art part, I have the freedom to try some other stuff. Not to say that it doesn't work with sketch stuff, but I think with the lines from the sketch, I feel more inclined to follow them closely. In a sense, it kind of traps my imagination to just the sketch phase. I have also noticed that I'm a little faster with the shape method, which is a very nice bonus, since I spend hours on each digital art piece. I would suggest trying out the shape method. You might find out you enjoy using it more, or that it improves your art. I can't guarantee that it would help, though. Plus, unfortunately, it's a bit harder to do if you're a traditional artist, though it's still a possible method. I use it for planning my traditional art sometimes, just so I can get a general silhouette idea. Funny enough, despite all of the digital art stuff I do make traditional art more frequently. And I do all the initial planning on paper first. I've noticed that if I don't do the planning on paper first, then my digital stuff tends to turn out just a little bit off. Anyway, with the line art for the dragon, I tried something a bit different. Not too different, though. Now, with most of my high-quality pieces, meaning the ones I spend like 6+ hours on, I do thick and thin lines. Typically, what I would do was the thick lines for the parts that were closer to the viewpoint or camera, and thin lines for the parts that were farther away. While I will probably still do that a bit, I think I found a better method. I will still do the thick and thin lines, but I'll make the thicker parts where the shadows are and the thinner parts where the light is coming from. I think this made the final piece more appealing, but also with the addition of me being a little more dramatic with the parts that I made thick. There are still advantages to the old method I was using, but I think for my style the new method works better. The only problem with it is I have to do a lot more pre-planning. Before, I would really only think about where the light was coming from once I got to that part. Now I need to think of it when I'm doing the lines. This new method might also be a bit more time consuming, but I think I'm still willing to do it for the better outcome. Once again, I would suggest trying this if you aren't doing so already. You don't even need to do the same thing as me, just using a line variation can help a lot. Well, now we're on to the coloring. I'm not sure if there's really too much of a method to just my base coloring. It's just flat colors. I pretty much do what looks good, but if you're struggling, just remember the complementary colors and monochromatic color scheme rules and other stuff like that. It'll help you get a nice color synergy if you use those rules or schemes. You all know what I'm talking about. You could also use a color scheme generating website. I have a few times when I just, can't think of anything. The website that I use, I will put in the description for you guys. I think it works pretty well. Anyways, what I think can make or break the dragon, other than the shading and lighting, is the texturing that you do. The texturing can tell people who are looking at your art what it might feel like to touch the dragon, or whatever else you're drawing. For the scaled parts of the dragon, I just use a dot brush and repeatedly run over areas with slight variations of the original base color I set. I also do this to blend parts of the scaled dragon together when there are different colors or shades instead of just blurring them together. I think it looks a bit more natural, but not necessarily the thing I do all the time. Sometimes just a simple blur does work. For smoother parts or places with very small scales, I do tend to smudge or blur to make the gradient from lighter to darker or vice versa. This is the strat I normally use with the horns and spikes. I also typically do some blurred strokes of different colors for feathers and fur. Not too sure why I decided not to do it with this pretty little girl's feathers, but oh well. It's in the past and ended up looking fine in the end. But I did have to do just a little bit more work with the lighting, so it didn't end up just looking like a kind of weird red blob. Speaking of lighting, I'm now gonna go on to that. Well, technically shadows first. I tried with the lighting first, but it just doesn't work for me for some reason. I do consider lightings and shadows a part of the same chunk, though, as I will bounce between the two once I get a bit further along. Though it's a small amount of bouncing around, so it might be a little bit hard to notice when just watching the speed paint. Anyways, for the shadows, I typically use a dark blue or dark purple color, never just straight up black. That can muddy up the piece. I have a few times used other dark colors for shadows, but dark blue or purple tends to work for most of the pieces. For the lighting, I determine the color of the light source and try and figure out which edges would have the light. It was pretty easy to figure that out because of the line work stuff that I did this time around, with the whole new method I talked about earlier. Anyway, after I get the edge lighting done, I move on to the lighting that shows the curvature of areas. It's a simple process as I just blob in the light color into areas without shadows and where it would make sense, of course. Then after that, I just lower the opacity and blur it. I did experiment a bit this time, though. Instead of just doing the light color, I also went over with some white to make it have more of a shine, but not straight up. It was also very significantly blurred. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute when I get to it. I do like this new addition to my method, and I will definitely be using it in the future when I deem it necessary for semi-shiny, semi-not shiny dragons. Anyway, after I get done with the lightings and shadow, my process can vary. This time around, I was messing with the line art again. For a lot of my pieces, I like to just lower the opacity of the line so it's not straight up black. This time, I didn't like that too much, so I changed the colors of the line art instead. I don't typically do this because it takes a long time with how I do it. Probably how I'm doing it is not the most efficient method, and I think I'm going to experiment with doing it better, but I ended up doing it this time because it was going to go on a shirt, so I figured I might as well. After that, I worked on the background. I made a moon, which I was very proud of. Because of the moon, I of course made the background a night sky, which I'm now realizing I do a lot, maybe a little too much. I typically do the night skies, though, because I find them easier, and I think the dragon stands out more when I do it. I will practice making other kinds of backgrounds, but do expect the night skies to continue. My night sky process isn't the hardest thing to replicate if you do want to. I normally make a gradient in the background, really any color, but this time I did the more typical bluish purple, as I deemed it looked nice. If you are watching the video, not just listening to me, you'll see that I did try with a kind of more greenish color, but I ended up just not liking it that much. Anyway, after getting the gradient into place, I'll start putting stars of varying sizes. I just repeatedly tap the screen until I think it looks nice. For a lot of the night skies, I'll make a more concentrated amount of stars in specific parts to draw people's eyes to the particular area. How noticeable it is, I'm not sure, but I like doing it, so I will continue to do so. After I do get the stars, I just duplicate the layer and use the blur tool to give my stars a slight glow. After I do all of that, I move on to the finishing details. The finishing details could literally be anything. For this, I made the clouds and added a rim light. Rim light for me works like 50% of the time. though I think it was a nice touch, and I can tell I'm improving with the use of room light as I'm starting to get, I think, more and more successful. I know I will get better, I just need to practice. Anyways, I did a few more bits of small adjusting and then added my signature, meaning I'm done. I think this is my best piece to date, currently. The next thing I make might be better, but for now I think it's my best. I do know it's going to be pretty hard to beat, seeing that I spent 13 hours and 3 minutes on it. Hopefully I'll be faster next time I make an amazing art piece like this. I really don't want to spend another 13 hours. I'm assuming it probably took that long because of the new techniques I was using. So, at least now that I know them and I won't need to experiment, I should be able to shave off 30 minutes, maybe an hour. We'll see in the future. Anyways, I hope watching this you guys enjoyed, but we're also able to maybe pick up some tips and tricks and other stuff that you could use in your next art piece. That's all there is for the rest of the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. It does help me out and motivates me. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye!